we're going to be talking about the instruments of the orchestra. So this is what the orchestra looks like when it's all laid out on the stage. We have, let me get my pen so I can draw. We have the conductor, who is always right up here at the front middle. He has the score, which is on the stand, which is always a very complicated score because it has to have the lines of music for every single instrument in it. And as you can see, there is so many instruments in the orchestra. Then we have the string section that goes and wraps around this whole front part. Sorry about my messy drawing. It wraps around this whole front part right here. So we have violins towards the left side, violas, cellos, and bass. So it goes from high strings to low strings. We then have our woodwind section here. And yes, saxophone is included in the wind section because it has a reed, just like the other woodwind instruments do, even though it looks like it should be in the brass section. Our next family of instruments we have are the brass instruments here, with the French horns, trumpets, trombones, and tuba. And then our last section in the back is our percussion section, which has timpani, bass drum, really low drum, snare drum, cymbals, xylophone, vibraphone, gong, triangle, and tubular bells, which are very interesting sounding. Take all my drawings away. Okay, so again, this is the string family, and each instrument, they really do look very similar, but the smallest one is the violin, the largest one is the double bass. I think people get the viola and the violin mixed up the most because viola is only just slightly bigger than the violin and has a slightly lower sound. And then of course we have the cello, which you sit behind to play because it is very big, and then the double bass. Here is a example of what the string family sounds like when they're all playing together, and I believe there is a harpsichord in this recording as well.
Strings.
So if you notice also, I will start playing it again in a second, but you can hear the dynamic changes as well. Just a reminder, we talked about dynamics last week, and dynamics are the loudness or the softness of music. So at the beginning, they started out at a pretty loud dynamic, probably forte. And then when they repeated it, they went down to piano to a very soft sound, quieter sound. So anyway, that is the string family. The next family, this is also in the string family. This is a harp, and the way that someone plays it is that they would sit right behind, right here, or stand. Mostly it's sitting from what I've seen. And they have the harp back, lean onto their shoulder, and then they reach out in front of them and play the harp like this. Here is what the harp sounds like.
Harp.
it's a really relaxing sound. I love the harp. Our next family that we have is the woodwind instruments, and those are characterized by being played with the breath and your air that comes out of your mouth. The piccolo here, the really short one, is the highest woodwind instrument. It is a very shrill, high noise. And then it just goes, as you go move to the right, it's a lower and lower sound, except for the recorder. I'm not really sure why that's there. That's not in the orchestra. Although it is an instrument that is played with air, but I am going to exit for now because we were talking about instruments in the orchestra, and a recorder is not included in that. So we have the piccolo, flute, clarinet, English horn, and the big tall red one is a bassoon. Here are what the woodwind instruments sound like together.
Woodwinds.
So as you can tell, there is a significant difference in sound in the woodwind instruments than from the string instruments. Moving on, let's take my little X away. The English horn, I just really wanted you to hear what the English horn sounds like by itself because I think it's really beautiful. It is also a woodwind instrument.
English horn.
So that is what the English horn sounds like. This is the instrument that I talked about earlier that might trick some people into thinking that it's in the brass family, but it is not. It is in the woodwind family, mainly because, like I said before, this piece right here, which takes a wood reed, just like the woodwind instruments do, to play, whereas the brass instruments do not use a reed. So even though it looks brass, that little part up at the top makes it a woodwind instrument. Here is what the saxophone sounds like.
Saxophone.
Okay. Moving on to our next family, we have the brass instrument family, or the brass family. Trumpet is the smallest one. Then we have trombone with the slide that goes out. We have the French horn, and then the tuba is the largest one. Here is what the brass family sounds like together.
Brass.
They can be played much louder, which is why you see these instruments in marching bands a lot too, because they can play over the noise that's in a football stadium. And now we are to the percussion family. Now, percussion instruments have an interesting definition, which is anything that can be struck, scraped, and make a percussive type of sound, or just think about when you're hitting a drum, a triangle, using a wood block or a scraper. All of those are contained in percussion family, the percussion family. So really quick, this is a bass drum, this is a snare drum, triangle, and timpani, a set of timpani down here. Here is what a group of percussion instruments, not necessarily just these, but here's what a group of percussion instruments sounds like.
Percussion.
So just in that, I heard the bass drum, I heard the tubular bells, which are basically like pipes that come down that are metal that you hit with a rubber mallet, make kind of like a church bell sound. I heard a xylophone, and I heard a couple of other percussion instruments as well. Here's another slide of percussion instruments. Some people don't know that the piano is actually considered a percussion instrument, which can be a little confusing because some people would think it would be in the strings family because it has the strings that run on this whole inside of this board right here. But the thing that makes it a percussion instrument is the hammer that goes down when you push a key for the piano that hits the string. And so it's kind of like whenever you hit a gong or you hit a drum, that hammer action is what makes the piano a percussion instrument. We have the cymbals, which you clang together, vibraphone, gong. And here's a recording of a piano that I thought was just really pretty, and I wanted you guys to hear it. Okay, and I think my next slide is a recording of a symphony playing a song. And I want you to listen carefully and see if you recognize what movie this orchestral composition is from. And then of course, be looking, noticing all the instruments that we just talked about, listening to their different sounds. I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit because we're running out of time. Skipping to the end. Okay, so as you were watching that, did you recognize what movie it's from? It is from Pirates of the Caribbean. And actually, most movies, the soundtrack is an orchestra, or at least one song from a really epic movie soundtrack is an orchestra playing. And it just gives that epic, adventurous feel, especially in Pirates of the Caribbean.